Hello HEMA friends and welcome to this new video. Today we're going to talk about lightsabers. So as we are close to May the 4th, it is tomorrow if you're watching this on Patreon and yesterday if you're watching this on YouTube, I wanted to make a video about lightsabers and how they will work in real life. Luckily for us, Damiensaber sent me a couple of beautiful lightsabers and so I decided to go for it today. I will talk more about these beautiful lightsabers later in the video, but for now, let's start with the topic of today. So, other YouTubers already gave their perspective on how the lightsaber would work in real life, and today, after 13 years of HEMA, I decided to give my perspective on the subject because, generally speaking, I disagree with many of them. Now, one thing that everyone already said, which is correct, is that this sword doesn't need to be used with two hands. Now, this replica, let's call it, of a lightsaber works just fine with two hands. Actually, it is the best way to use it, and it moves pretty well, actually. But a real lightsaber, let's call it, doesn't need to be used with two hands. Now, when you're using a sword with two hands, you do it for a variety of motivation. First of all, of course, you can put more strength in certain cuts. You can thrust with opposition if you have like a crossguard which saves you and can, let's say, catch the other blades while doing this, or keep you safe while thrusting. It makes your actions faster because using the sword with two hands, of course, makes for faster movements and redirection of the blade compared to using it with only one hand. But ideally for a realistic lightsaber, this will not be useful, let's say, or it will not give these benefits. First of all, because you don't have a crossguard, so you can't, for example, land thrusts which are safer in nature because of the crossguard. You don't have any kind of hand protection, and so you don't have this kind of pros. You don't have to put a lot of energy in your cuts because this thing is like a death stick. So as soon as you touch something, it burns everything or melt everything. So you don't need a lot of force, let's say, in your blade while landing a cut to damage anything, actually. Also, you don't need to be faster because ideally this will not be the sword that you're using, in a sense that there is not the air drag given by the fact that this is like a tube, of course, in real life, and also has some weight. So the balance of the sword is kind of the one of more or less a longsword, just a little bit closer to the handle compared to a longsword, but you have the same dynamic. That's what makes the sword spin around and do all the tricky stuff that people who make choreography do. Instead, the sword will be like this. So you would have this kind of weight, actually. You have the balance of your blade inside of your hand, simply because a real lightsaber will have the blade made of energy, let's call it. Be it like actual light, so a laser blade, or some kind of plasma blade or whatever, kept in its place thanks to some kind of magical technology, some kind of force field or whatever. So you don't have any kind of weight, any kind of air drag in this part of the blade, theoretically speaking, and so you only have the weight of the handle, which is in your hand. The balance is actually in your hand, and you are not actually moving a lot of weight around. Now, it doesn't mean that because the weapon is very light, you have to keep it in front and just move the hands. Actually, it's a very bad idea, especially because you don't have any hand protection. And one thing that the movies got right about lightsabers fight is that most probably the first thing that you will lose is your hand or your arm, actually. So let's now imagine for a second that I have a blade attached to this thing, an energy blade, and I'm moving my sword around to fight. So I am doing like my parry riposte super fast, moving from one side to the other, thrusting really fast, parrying, etc. Now, I'm moving really fast, but there are, again, other weapons that move as fast or as close as this fast in real life. Now this is a 1940s Olympic saber. Now it is basically the same weight of nowadays Olympic sabers, and as you can see, I can move as fast as I want, basically in the same way as I can move with my real lightsaber. So there are already people fighting at the speed at which this sword will move like, and they are not even able to use the force actually. So before moving on with the video, I just wanted to talk a little about these lightsabers. Now, when I received them, I enjoyed a number of things. First of all, they have a longer blade compared to the one I used till now, so I really enjoyed it. They actually move in the way a lightsaber would move in the films, actually. So it's pretty cool in this sense. They are used at best with two hands, actually. So if you want to use this kind of lightsaber, that's the best way to move it, actually, which pretty fits, again, the lore of Star Wars. You have, as always, the various options for the light. So you have purple, red, or whatever. So you have various options also for the effects of the blade, which is pulsating, stable, or whatever. You can actually connect this kind of thing with your phone. There is an app which can control the sword, where you can change, let's say, various effects of the blade, such as the intensity of the light, the sound effects, or whatever. You can also modify the way in which the blade reacts to certain movements. You have this kind of app which is pretty useful. It is pretty easy to control the blade through the app, actually, and I found it pretty interesting, to be honest. So as you can see, I asked for a twin blade so that I can make future videos about this kind of weird weapon and how to use it ideally. It's a pretty cool thing because you basically have two twin blades, and you can attach them together with a little tool that comes together with the twin blades. So you either have two lightsabers that you can use to have fun with your friends, or you can attach them together and have this kind of double lightsaber. So if you want to buy a Damiensaber Lightsaber, check under the video, in the video description, in the comment section, and you are probably actually seeing it right now, the discount code that you can put in the website to receive 5% discount on their lightsabers. Very good, let's get back to how to use our lightsaber in the proper way. But actually the crucial point about this subject is the fact that, yes, moving the hand really fast around, the weapon really fast, is crucial while sword fighting. But an even more important thing is how fast you move your feet, which doesn't actually change as far as we know if we look at the TV series and films about Star Wars, because Jedis are actually moving pretty slow on their feet, to be honest. While fighting, they are actually walking around and swinging the sword around. They are not actually in a fight stance most of the time, and they are not really reactive in this sense. They are moving the sword around mainly with the hands. They are not experienced fighters, actually they are actors, and they move in a way which is cool. Instead, with this kind of super fast weapon, which is really scary, you will be in a very deep and fast stance to move forward and backward as fast as you can to try and avoid any touch that you can't actually parry with your lightsaber. So even if maybe they are not scared, we will see Jedis and Sith sitting in a deep position, really fast, really twitchy, ready to move around in a really fast way, because they have to be ready, because the cut arrives in a really fast way, as fast as a modern saberist can do, actually, as we have seen, and they have to be ready to parry, riposte, or to attack into the attack of this kind of thing, to cut down the opponent's arm, to parry, riposte on top of their attack, or whatever, or to void the action of the opponent really fast with a void, and then attack into the new opening. So, as I mentioned before, some people suggested that a good way of using the lightsaber in a dueling way would be keeping a forward position, like in Spanish destreza, a kind of way of using the rapier, to engage the opponent at maximum distance and then sniping the opponent's hands in some kind of way in front of you with tiny cuts and whatever. Actually, this will be a semi-good idea if the other guy does the same thing, but actually if the opponent is smart enough to avoid keeping the hand in front and keeps the weapon backward, when you have the weapon extended, you're just moving at the speed of your feet. And that's the only variation of rhythm that you can deliver. Instead, you actually want to keep your hand close to the body, because when you have the weapon here, you can parry, you can do any kind of fast movement, especially with this kind of super light weapon, and then land cut on top of the opponent's arm, ideally, especially if the arm is exposed, the hand is exposed. There is nothing defending your hand and nothing defending your arm. So if I am fighting someone which is facing me in this kind of way, I will just snipe the hand, actually, which is the closest target, or even if the opponent is keeping the weapon in this way, which will be ideal, to be honest, with this kind of weapon. Again, because it is so light, I would even snipe the handle, and so basically destroying the lightsaber, and so basically disarming my opponent. So which kind of approach to fighting I suggest? So I will suggest, first of all, to keep the weapon as back as possible, to have as much reach as possible. This will not change the balance of your sword in a dramatic way, because remember that we are not talking about this sword, but about this sword, actually. So it is as fast to move this thing around as it is by keeping it in this way. It doesn't change anything, basically. So I will keep this kind of guard position, hand backward on the handle to have maximum reach, and my arm protected as much as possible, extending it only when I am going to attack, or ready to do any kind of parry from this kind of position. Now, this kind of parries will be extremely easy. I could even close the line of my leg or whatever, and so I'm able either to parry my leg, to parry my chest, and my arm, which is the most important thing to keep safe, is safe. So I will remain in this kind of position, the arm kept safe by the position itself, and I will extend it at maximum reach only when I need to attack the opponent. I will do it ideally with tiny snappy cuts, either toward the hand when it is exposed, the hand of my opponent, if the opponent exposes it, or toward the head, chest, or leg. The leg would actually be a very interesting target with a weapon such as this one, which cuts everything in the blink of an eye. The actual fighting will look really weird, because the actual game will be either catching the opponent's weapon when the opponent tries to attack, or again trying to defend with fast parry riposte, keeping the weapon in this kind of way, only with one hand, maximum reach. Thrusting will be an idea, but it is less interesting if compared to cutting, because when you are cutting you have much more surface that can hit the target, and it is so easier to hit the target if compared to thrusting, which is basically a dot. Thrusting was lethal and scary, and the ideal attack back in the days when swords were actually used, simply because with a real weapon made of steel and with some kind of hand protection, you can keep the opponent's weapon at bay while thrusting, and then land a scary action which gets deep into the target and creates a lot of damage. But for this kind of weapon, thrusting and cutting are the same. They deliver equal damage. Actually, a cut delivers even more damage than a thrust, which is completely the opposite if compared to real weapons, generally speaking. So again, arm close to the body, really fast twitchy cut, parry riposte really fast, cut on tempo on the arm of the opponent which is approaching. So long story short, they will move in a way which resembles a lot modern Olympic saber, because of weapon similarities, because of how fighting will look, etc., etc. Of course, we are talking about dueling and not weird thing about deflecting projectile and lasers or whatever. Now, actually, whoever called these things lightsaber had a great idea, because they are actually the same kind of weapon if they would be real. They would be laser Olympic sabers, like light Olympic sabers. Of course, they will fight for life and death. The approach to fighting will be different. They will not rush forward most of the times. They will be maybe a little bit more scared. They have the force, everything will change or whatever. But the dynamic of the fight and the way in which the weapon moves around, it will look similar in a dramatic way. The only thing which is different, of course, is the end protection gave by the saber, which the lightsaber doesn't have. But this protection is minimal, and it saves your hand, but not your arm or your wrist or whatever, especially because this kind of weapon flex. Another thing which is pretty similar is that even in modern sabers, with modern saber, you can actually hit the opponent with the flat or whatever part of the blade, who cares, as soon as it scores. And this is the same thing actually with lightsabers. So you don't have to hit the opponent with the edge, because there is not an edge. You can use whatever hand mechanic. You can hit with what will be the flat in a real sword, and it's the same thing. So you have much more options in terms of diagonals to take, hand mechanics to use, and whatever. So they are basically the same thing, funny enough. Very good, people, we are at the end of this video. Thanks for watching as always. Remember to check my Patreon page, link in the description if you want to support me. And remember to check the Damiensabers website. You can also buy them again with the discount code that you find here. And check them out. I really enjoyed this kind of saber. They move around in a very good way. They are pretty well balanced. If you are some guy which wants to do a lot of tricky moves and whatever, they have a perfect balance for this kind of thing. And yeah, so check them out. Thanks for watching as always, and see you next time.